Hello, listeners, and welcome to our first episode of Elite Syrian Fantasy of the 2021 season through the AURORA Podcast. My name is Karam, and I'm here back, if you remember me, with also Jakob. Jakob, welcome back. Tell me, how are you?
Thank you for having me back on. I don't think I've been on this podcast, but it's nice to be back. I'm good. Viking is on a 2-win streak, so I'm good. And I'm looking forward to chatting Elite Series with you again.
Yeah, it's been great. I must say that I've been missing this podcast and the YouTube channel for those who were following me. You and Espen as well, but we are moving away from the YouTube channel videos into this podcast. So we will still upload this version into YouTube, but we will focus more on the podcast because, it's a time limitation, really. It's one of the reasons where I could not continue with the video versions. But yeah, great to be back. I'm quite happy. And I must say, I want to thank everyone on FPL Twitter community who welcomed the idea of having the podcast back. So let's kick off with how we kicked off this season. So this is the first episode, but it's after game week 5 finished. So Jakob, let's start with you. How did you do in the first 4 game weeks? A quick summary, how many points you have in total, and where you are in terms of the rankings.
Yeah, I had 2 very good first game weeks. Was around 1K after Dunham captain in game week 2, where he got like 39 points or something. But as the same story as last season, from game week 2, it went to shit, and the last 2 game weeks have been 2 very big red arrows, down to 14K at in game week 4. Mainly reason because I went Vecchia over Zachariasen, and I didn't even own Zachariasen, so there was 40 points dropped versus 8 for Vecchia, I think he got,
Yeah.
and he got injured after as well, so it was one of my worst decisions in a fantasy game. But this game week, I have turned it a bit around. I got 58 points with a -4 hit, and from 14K to 10K, so not the worst start after all. And it's only game week 5, so it's quite close between the ranks, and I have 251 points.
Yeah, that's not too bad, isn't it? I did not start much better than yourself. I had literally 2 good game weeks where I managed a top 10K game week rank. That was game week 2, where I had the Dunham captain as well with 80 points. And last game week, although I had 7 players with no points, either no-shows or penalty miss, thank you, Tyler, I managed to get a small green arrow, which is fantastic in this kind of a game week. But to sum up my start of the season, it was Zachariasen less. So I started with Sorley in midfield for the 9.5 million slot, and then I swapped it to Vikia, who first of all did not get anything. Second of all, Sorley outscored him, and Zachariasen double outscored him by like 32 points if you capture Zachariasen versus Vikia. So by game week 3, I'm already 32 points down than everybody else, which is played a huge factor of where I am now. I was at 610 overall by game week 2, but then I ended up 17K after that game week, which is bizarre. Now I recovered a bit. Now I'm looming around the 4.5K. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster, but like you said, it's very close between the rankings. Although, do you know that the number 1 overall is about 85 points ahead of me now, which is about 100 points of you, which is mad.
Yeah, it's insane. And in one of my mini leagues with my mates, the leader in our mini league is 5th. So that mini league is gone already.
Yeah, see you next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So one of the funny things I've had this season is basically in the last 5 game weeks, I've had 10 yellow cards, 3 penalty misses, and quite some no-shows every now and here, which is not great for someone who wants to start strong this season. But I paid the cost of having 0 bench players because I want to focus on the 11 and start building value. But it proved that big mistake.
Mm.
Yeah, looking back at game week 5, a lot of interesting things happened, right? And we are coming closer to game week 7, which builds around strategy. But let's go quickly through the game week 5 matches.
Yeah.
Have you seen some matches, some highlights of some games you want to point out, and we can chat about it?
Yeah, I've seen the highlights of all the games, and I watched Viking, of course, and I watched the Molde Vålerenga game, which was a really good game. But the games that started at 6 p.m. 7 or 5 p.m. for UK players, there wasn't a lot of goals. It was very boring, at least first half. I don't think it
Yeah,
was a goal before like 30 minutes into the game week.
yeah, and there was like 3-4 goals after halftime, like, and
Yeah.
none of them was like fantasy relevant. So I was like,
No.
oh, skip, come on, next
Mm.
half. Yeah.
And but Bodø/Glimt again. They keep on scoring at least 2 goals. I think they did that the whole of last season, and they have continued it this season. They're not scoring like 4 or 5 or 6 yet, but they still score 2. Botheim 5-5. Who would have thought after going 15 games for Stabæk on loan last season, scoring 0. So really impressive. Lillestrøm got their first win, and suddenly after their defense have looked shocking in the first 2 game weeks they played, they finally keep a clean sheet after changing 2 of their defenders and goalkeeper, I believe. Rosenborg with a late win, did not look great. Sarpsborg continued to not score goals. Brann 6 losses in 6. Viking won over Mjøndalen, and of course the last game, which was a really good game. I thought Molde would maybe win it after they went 2-1 up, but Vålerenga managed to turn it around.
Yeah, it's quite a roller coaster of some games. I must say, when I was watching Sandefjord's Rosenborg through the live scores, I did watch the game itself, and we reached the 91st minute, and it was 1-1. I was like, how on earth does Zakariasen is blanking here? Because I don't have him, and I know my luck with him. It's like he has to come on with a winner, and he got the assist. And when you see a lot of managers, Captain Zakariasen, these 3 points multiplied to 2, so 6 points in total, make a huge difference. I lost like a 1.3k overall ranks just because of that late assist. But yeah, so it still hurts, and yeah, but it still could have been worse. And a lot of managers have Ritan, for example, or Hansen, who did not manage a clean sheet. But well done to Hovland. Where is that from, Hovland? Like a couple of assists and a goal, and a couple of goals already this season. Let me bring it up. So 2 assists and 1 goal by game week 5. So he did not manage that last season. He had 5 goals in 2019. So is he the guy from Rosenborg if you want to go for a defensive cover?
I still believe Reitan is the better choice, as he is a right back higher up the pitch. But Rosenborg have like this, every corner most of the corners they take, they like make a huge, like they pack everyone defenders into the keeper of the opposite. So they just like chip the ball in. And Hovland is, as a defender, he is really good at just like getting a touch on the ball. And that's why he has got some assists. And the goal from yesterday was from he stayed up after a set piece. So he seems like he wants to score some goals as well. But I believe if you look when we are in game week 30, I believe Reitan will have more points because he is more attacking, and he creates a lot of chances still. But Molin scored yesterday, but Rosenborg doesn't really have a. If Rosenborg gets a striker to get going as well as Zakariasen, I think Reitan will get more assists as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting one then. All right, so let's move on to the Molde Vålerenga game, and he was benched last game, which kind of makes sense because he played a lot of minutes and he had an injury during the game week 3, I believe, and he and then came back. So I think who bought him this game week were a bit unlucky, but I think
Yeah,
he's a great option going forward. He has Mjondalen next game week, which is a game week that worries me because he's in a hot form, and I'm not ruling out a big score for Molde. So, but on the other hand, Valeringa is quite a surprising team. Like they dropped 4 points in the last two games in games they expected to win,
yeah,
but they managed a huge victory against Molde. So the attack, Dunham, Layuni are coming good with the points. I want to touch on Kjartansson because we were chatting before we record this if he's an option for game week 7 when Valeringa has the double game week. And I checked the stats, and there's something quite staggering with him. Basically, Kjartansson scored 1 goal, right? And he's not on penalties. So the expected, if you look at the expected goals, on top of this list is Kjartansson with 4.7 expected goals, non-penalty, and he scored only one. So he's really, really, really underperforming what he should be getting. And I think this has to turn around. He's a good striker. He has good fixtures coming up. So do you think he is an option for the next game, which is especially for those who are considering a chip in game week 7?
yeah, 100%. The Vålerenga coach said yesterday that it's not Kjartansson's fault, at least yesterday, because he didn't get the ball. He felt like that, but in the other games, Kjartansson had definitely got the chances to score, and he is known as a clinical striker, so it's been a bit surprising to see him miss these chances. But for every striker, it's, as you can clearly see from Botheim at Bodø/Glimt, if you have confidence, you score at almost every chance. And with Kjartansson, it's the opposite at the moment. But the fixtures are still there. Vålerenga is still a very good team. With Dunham missing last penalty, I don't know if maybe Kjartansson is on them or if Dunham keeps them. And the double in 7 is one of the best in game week 7 as well. So, and he is known for scoring goals, so it will turn around at some point. It's just a question of when it will turn.
Yeah, well, hopefully for those who are planning to get him in game week 7, he comes good there. Double game week of Viking and Odd. So yeah, it's a brilliant one. Let's talk about also the defenses because 6 losses for Brand. Yeah, if you look at the defensive stats, expected goals conceded, by far, Brand is up there with 12.6 expected goals conceded. The second worst is Rosenborg with 8.9. So it's quite surprising to see Rosenborg. I didn't expect them to be there. I knew they were not very tight, but I didn't expect it to be second worst. But still, there are almost 4 goals difference between them and Brand. So they have their own league in terms of expected goals conceded. And then Shane McDermott of Kristiansand, Kristiansand defense comes in third worst with 8.8, but they kept a couple of clean sheets now.
Yeah.
So, what do you think of the defense, especially Bran? I've been watching them during the preseason, and they looked bad as well.
Yeah.
And since then, if you look at my captains, all my captains so far were against Bran. So, yeah, tell us, what do you think? Should we continue the Operation Target Bran?
Yeah, I think so. They have had some misfortune at some games, but they still look like a very poor defense. They have changed a lot in the defense. They have tried different things. I still believe that they don't have one good center back. They have 2 or 3 very average. Kolskogen being one of them, who is a good talent, but he still misses big things from his game. So I don't think, but I don't think Brann will concede like really much. So I don't think you have to target them like Ålesund last season, especially. But in some games, yes, I think Brann could be a good team to captain against. But looking at the other teams, it's quite funny to see like Vålerenga and Rosenborg in the top 4 for most goals expected conceded. So and Bodø/Glimt in top 6 and Molde in top 7. So all the like expected top 4 teams are are still expected to concede quite a lot of goals. And if we were talking about the opposite, like good defenses, we have to look at Haugesund, who only have 2.6, and if I'm not mistaken, they have not conceded in 3 games they have played so far this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look here and I see that Srovek of Sandefjord comes
Oh,
also like
Haugesund conceded 2 versus Bodø/Glimt. I just forgot.
yeah, and yeah, Sandefjord comes in third best in terms of expected goals conceded with only 3.7, which is not exactly what we thought of, right?
No.
Looking at the highlights and the results as well. All right, so game week 6 is just around the corner. Next Sunday, 30th of May. So let's have a look at the fixtures. And yeah, which games stand out for you in terms of captaincy?
In terms of captaincy, it is either the Mjøndalen-Molde game or the Vålerenga-Sandefjord game, who's like a standout. Of course, also Rosenborg-Stabæk is, if you have Zachariasen, it's always an option, but Stabæk is quite solid in defense, and but those 3 games could also add Bodø/Glimt an odd, so it could be quite spread around captain this game week, but I believe Dunham will be very highly captained, especially after scoring the late winner yesterday.
Yeah, my bus team captain was Dunham, which kind of a contradictory thing because I did not fancy buying Zachariasen, for example, at Sandefjord, because I had the feeling that Sandefjord will not be easy to concede. But again, you look here, you say, okay, Valeringa is strong enough to break down the Sandefjord. And looking at my team personally, I don't have a Molde attacker, so it might make sense to captain Dunham. However, if I somehow manage to move Berisha to Uhi, because that's a transfer waiting to happen either now or next game week, then I might captain Uhi because he got his rest and arguably the better fixture. So
and you get the lineup for Molde as well because it's the first game of the game.
Exactly. So I have already made my free transfer. I haven't waited, so we'll talk about it at the end of the podcast. Well, I'm very tempted by a -4 because I know I need a surgery to achieve to what I want in game week 7. And of course, that's a big question for many listeners who are preparing for the double game week 7, which to me it looks like one of the very best double game weeks we will ever have, maybe in Elite Syrian. And that's because Molde, Bodø/Glimt, and Vålerenga all doubling and arguably very good double game weeks. None of these 3 teams are playing each other, which is quite rare, right? But this is how the schedule fall to us. So one of the questions is about the strategy. Which strategy are you going to follow, Jakob? So we have 3 chips: Rich Uncle, Attack, and 2 captains. And you kind of make a case for each of the chip. But let's start with you. Which chip you are going for as it stands?
Yeah. At the start of the season, I started with 3 quite expensive strikers because I was aiming to do the attack chip in game week 7. But after some game weeks and needing to change my team around to not so expensive strikers, I have felt like it was too much of a sacrifice in my midfield and in my defense to get a good enough game week 7 attack, which Charters on Uhi and Botheim, for example. And that would need to change because I'm aiming to use my wild card quite late. I would need to stick with that midfield for some game weeks as well, which is not ideal. So I have changed my mind and will most likely go for the rich uncle because you have an unlimited budget and there are, as you said, so many big teams who have a great game week with double game week. So you get to use your budget for full strength. But as you also said, it is the best game week for attack, and it's also the best game week for rich uncle, I would say. So both options are quite good, but I think I will go for the rich uncle as I could get a good midfield and a good attack.
Yeah, the nice thing about the rich uncle is that you don't have a budget, so you can have a team of Ikram, Saltness, Sorley, Uhi, Buthim, all of those players, everyone you can imagine, and there's no budget limits. So that's the quite brilliant thing about it. And yeah, I mean, it's there is a clear difference between the two chips. First of all, I think what might help in the decision for every manager is how is your team now, and how far are you from having a high number of double game weekers? Are you close to 11 or 10 players? In my case, I currently have 7 double game weekers with one more transfer for free, and a couple of hits might get me through to 10 players, and plus the goalkeeper, which Karlstrom plays Stabæk. So it's not really a bad game week to have him. Maybe he gets some points, but I will have almost a full team who are double game weeks. So in terms of number of games for my team, I will get 20 plus games, right? Having also the attack means that I get to captain 3 players. Everyone has a double game week, so that's a huge factor. Now, in terms of the attack and 2 captains, I would say I'm not going to consider the 2 captains at all. Again, if you have 3 captainable players, why would you captain 2? Because you can captain them later on, right? But it's one of the hardest chips to find 3 strikers who have a nice games on double game weeks to captain them. So it's kind of, you get rid of the chip, because it's the hardest one to deal with. But at the same time, you have 3 decent strikers. Now, my issue with this one is basically you have to sacrifice the midfield. There's absolutely no way for a normal team, apart from the rich uncle, you can have a decent midfield along with having these 3 strikers. And the 3 strikers I'm talking about is Uhi, Kjartansen, and Botham. If you are planning to do that way, because they are so expensive, they take up a huge amount of cash. So are we going to sacrifice the likes of Sorley or maybe Adunnom and go for like an Orsnes or Berg or those 6.5 midfielders to play the attack? So do you think it's gonna be worth it?
It's difficult to say. You get, as you said, maybe the 3 best strikers in the league playing 2 really good fixtures with captain them all. But are they going to get you more points than owning them, but also owning the likes of Dunham, Surley, Saltness, and so on? Will that combined plus one of them will be your captain get more points than 3 of those? It's really difficult to say. Ørsnes and Berg are also capable of getting points, but are they getting more than Dunham and Eichem? I doubt it. And for someone who maybe will go for the attack and maybe to get one more good player in midfield, maybe go for a striker from Strømsgodset or Sarpsborg or Odd. Their fixtures are not. Odd have Kristiansund and Vålerenga to quite. I don't maybe Bakenga, but Kristiansund have kept 2 clean sheets in the last 2. Sarpsborg they don't score goals, and Strømsgodset, it's difficult to say. Rosenborg and Bodø/Glimt, I don't think it will be much goals there either. So it's whether you think the midfielders would get more points than the double points of your attackers.
Yeah, well, that's the alternative option is to not go for those top 3 strikers. Is go for 2 plus 1, a cheaper one. And we've got some questions whether Friday or Coney or Bakinga or Lauritsen would be worth going for, because they are almost 2 to 3 million cheaper than any of those other 3 strikers, and you can invest that money to build a better midfield. The biggest advantage the rich uncle chip users will get those 3 strikers, and they get the midfielders they want. So in terms of the difference between those 2 chips, I would say we will pretty much have the same defense, we will pretty much have the same attack, but there will be a huge difference in the midfielders. But at the same time, we on the attack get 4 more captains. right? Because the rich uncle, you have one captain. If it's gonna be a rich uncle, who is the captain you are thinking of? That's because that's a good question as well. Can you split between the three up top?
If I was going to rank them from best to worst on this current, I would probably go Uhi first, as he is the best striker,
Yeah.
and have Sandefjord Sarpsborg, then Botheim in current form, and then Kjartansson, as he is in the worst form out of the three of them, and also I would say has the worst fixtures. Still, they are good, but Viking and Odd are
Mm.
candidates for top six, so it will not like be 5 or 6 now, which I think Bodø/Glimt and Molde are capable of in one of the games.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree on the rankings. I thought it's gonna be much closer between Uhi and Botham because Botham is consistent. He's not getting you the 10 points or 15 points, but if he gets 6 to 8 points every game, that's 14, that's 28 from one captain, right? So it's not too bad. Uhi is the one who is capable of a hat trick or a hole in each of the games. So because of the potential, I will go Uhi, Botham, and then Kjartansson as a third best striker amongst them. And I think they are in a far higher category than the other three strikers. But there is an appeal if you are not going to invest in those three strikers, the big three strikers. There is an appeal to go for the cheaper ones and invest in midfield. All right, so yeah, that's a good discussion about the strategy. Let's have a look at the questions and. We have some similar questions to what we just discussed. Let's go through them again and see what we have. So first question is from our friend Heskebo, who is, by the way, having a podcast for beginners as well. So I highly recommend you have a look and listen to him as well. How do you assess the start of the two promoted teams they have made? So Jakob, what do you think of the promoted sides?
Yeah, Lillestrøm is a bit difficult to judge as they have only played 3 games. But if you ask me this before yesterday's game, I would say that they look like they're going right down again because they conceded a lot of goals and didn't look great. Played better yesterday, but playing against an odd team who has not had a great start either. So I think we will need to see a bit more of them before we judge them. Lene Olsen scored. I think there is more appeal to go for an attacker in that team. And as we saw yesterday as well, they kept a clean sheet, but 2 defenders was rotated and they changed the keeper as well. So difficult to say who play. Tromsø, really good start, although they had Bodø/Glimt and Molde. They played good versus both of those teams, beat my Viking at home. And everyone thought, oh, this is a team who can challenge for top 10, and then you lose 3-1 at home to Sandefjord. But again, 1-1 against Strømsgodset yesterday. Okay result, I would say. Lots of good cheap assets. Many had Moses for his brace versus Molde. Someone has gone for Tutland. I have gone myself for Karlström and Kitolano, who scored yesterday as well. So many good options there. So they remind me a bit of like Leeds in the FPL. Lots of cheap options who.
That's interesting.
And they can beat a big team, but they can also like suddenly lose. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a very thoughtful assessment there. I like something about the Lillestrøm side. The first one is Lin Olsen. He's an experienced striker for Eliteserien, and looking back at his history in 2017, 18, and 19, he has managed 13 plus returns in each of the 3 seasons he played in Eliteserien. So for 8.5 million, if he keeps up this level, I guess that he will be a good option when the fixtures turn. And he's certainly one of the options I will have a look at coming the game week 13, 14 when they have double. So he is one that I like. Also, I saw some nice stats about Ranger. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he's a right back for Lillestrøm. 4.5 million. He has 4 shots, one on target, and he looks like someone that I don't know. Is he at Dallas, for example, in terms of how attacking he is? He's not playing midfield like Dallas, but just for a comparison, he is an attacking side that he might be some decent option. And correct me if I am wrong. They have a Dragsnes. Is he the one from Mjøndalen? Because he was so attacking when he was in Mjøndalen.
Yeah,
Is he the same player?
he's the same player. Yeah, he transferred this winter, and
Yeah,
I would say it's difficult because Ranger is more cheap than Dragsnes, but against Viking 2 games ago, Dragsnes had like 2 really big chances. He gets in
yeah.
the box a lot. Ranger doesn't get that much in the box, although he had 3 shots last game as well. But he's more of the overlapping right back who gets a lot of crosses in. With Dragsnes, he also gets a lot of crosses in, but he also gets in the box. So it could be an option when Lillestrøm's fixtures gets better, as you said, with the double in 13 and 14.
Yeah, and the last name I want to mention is Kan Kairinen.
Yeah.
I hear some good things about him. I haven't seen enough, or haven't seen like he leveled up his game yet. So do you think he would be a good option at 6 million?
Maybe. He's a good player, but I don't know if he will become a great fantasy asset. But he is quite cheap, so maybe. But Aasen, who is quite a lot more expensive in 8 million or something, he's the more attacking out of the midfield, and I think he got the assist yesterday.
Okay, nice. Well, that's a good cover for those 2 promoted teams. Theodore is asking who to replace Olan Anderson with. He has 8.8 in the bank. So he's looking for an option in midfield with that price. So what do you think? I guess the transfers now will pretty much depend on what is your strategy come game week 7. If you are planning to use the attack, then you might consider some double game weaker in game week 7. So you gotta buy someone like an Orsnes or Linseth of Salzburg. I quite like where he plays as a left wing. I know you're not so keen. We discussed about it, chatted about him last night. But I think he has one of the best double game weeks out of the 3 other teams who are gonna double game week, and he might be good option at 6.5 along with Salitros. So yeah, that would be my suggestion. I looked at the FOTMOB as well, and in terms of chances created, I think let me just put it back, but I guess Orsnes is one of the highest players in terms of biggest chances created, with 2. So Frederick Orsnes, 2 big chances created. Only Mullins with 4 and Cabran with 3 have more bigger chances than Orsnes. So although he is like in a CDM role when the team sheet comes out, he is sort of like going forward, and he is capable of nicking some goals, just like Berg. So he could be some option. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with the picks. And as you said, it depends on what strategy you're going with. If you're going for Rich Uncle, then maybe you can go for someone who is like Brynhildsen, Kitolano, or something quite expensive. But if not, and you have to get money to your strikers, then the options you have mentioned are good options.
Yeah. Okay. Leroy Bama is asked the best budget defender below 5 million road forward. So it's a tricky one here, because I'm not sure at under 5 million. I like the look of Ottensen of Stabæk.
Yeah.
Amankwa has a goal threat. I think he's 5 million. Ranger of Lillestrøm is 4.5, so he could be a decent option as well. Any other names that stood out from you after 5 game weeks?
After the last 2, I would say maybe a Kristiansund defender. The likes of Kuli cost only 4.5, but he was not playing yesterday, so maybe a bit of a risk. You could also, as you said, get Ottesen at 4.5. We
Mm,
talked about Ranger in Lillestrøm. I would probably say Ottesen is the best option, but he's not the best fixtures as of now. They
yeah.
turn, I think he has Molde, Vålerenga, and Rosenborg in the next four or something.
Mm,
So after that, he could be a good option. Lasse Nilsen at Tromsø, they have good fixtures. He's a really attacking fullback, so one of those could be good. Also, Pallesen Knutsen at Haugesund is a shout, as they have looked really good defensively.
yeah, very good options. There is someone I like to mention because he's very likable by the commentators. Is Marcus Nakem of Mjøndalen.
Yeah.
He's only 5 million. Well, he's 5 million now, and he got 12 points against Sandefjord because he scored and got 3 BBS. Then he got a bonus point yesterday against Viking, um, although his team has lost the game 2-1 and he did not score anything. So it seems like he's playing very well during the game, that he also managed to get some BBS. He doesn't have good game weeks in 6 and 7, but later on, he has Sandefjord, Christiansen, Odd, Lillestrøm, Harrison, Brand, Sandefjord, all the way until Rosenborg game week 15, where they
Yeah.
have the first half fixture, and they have a double-double. So if you look for someone who is long-term, just throw him in the 11. The Naka might be a good option.
And he is maybe he took the penalty against Sandefjord, missed and scored on the rebound.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know if he keeps them because it still was a goal, or if he gives it away. But Gauseth, who is injured for Mjøndalen, I believe, will take the penalties when he is fit, but he is still injured, so maybe he's on penalties as well. I would also like to mention, if you're talking about Mjøndalen and the good fixtures from Game Week 8, we have Nicolas Valstad, who is only 4.5, who's a fullback. He is the
Nice.
one who was replacing Dragsnes from last season. So if you want even more cheap to save money, he could be a good option from Game Week 8.
Oh, very nice one indeed. All right, so last couple of questions. Who is the best midfielder from Bodø/Glimt? Philip Christiansen is asking, which is we thought until last game week that Sorley might be the better option than Saltness.
Mhm.
But again, he did not score anything last game week. The main difference between the Bodø/Glimt midfielder this season and the last season is that basically you cannot anticipate a hole every game week. Last season, you were like Singranariel and Høge. It's like 10 plus. The question it would be who scores more. But this one, it was like 5 to 6 to 8 points max. Saltness, he scored the first game week, but then it blanks all the way. So is it harder than we think to pick up the best Bodø/Glimt midfielder?
Yeah, and also in the last 2 or 3 game weeks, Solbakken has also looked really good.
Yeah.
Created a lot of chances, has missed some chances, scored yesterday. So he is also a shout. So as of now, I still believe that Saltness will be the highest scoring at the end of the season out of these 3.
Interesting.
Mainly because he will get 90 minutes all the way, but with all the problems Bodø/Glimt is having with their defenders, maybe Saltness has to play a center back sometimes.
Yeah.
So as of now and how they have looked, maybe it's really tight between Sørli and Solbakken, but I might think that Solbakken will outscore Sørli.
If I understood FODMOB correctly, the Sorley has created 2 big chances so far this season. Saltness nothing. So that's quite surprising here. And I'm also interested for any listener who watched the Bodø/Glimt game, when the center backs went off injured, who has joined Hoy Bratton in center back? Was it Berg or Saltness? I didn't watch the game or the highlights to figure that out, but it might be a huge factor on the decision to make if we know that the Mo and Lode will be long-term injured. All right, so the last question we have here is about Botham. So is it too late to let Botham in and throw away Berisha? So I think it's never too late. I think it's the time to get on Botham train because he has a double game week 7. The question is, would you throw Berisha now or you wait one more game week? Because that's also a question I would have for
Yeah.
myself, because I'm gonna get Uhi. But it's a Horizon. Did you see enough from Horizon against Bodø/Glimt to keep Viking out of the game potentially?
Yeah, it's many managers are asking this question about keeping Berisha or getting Botheim for in the long term, as Botheim has a double in 7 and also in 9. So for long term, I would say Botheim. But the Haugesund fixture is a good fixture for Berisha, as he will get a lot of chances to run in behind. But Haugesund has been really good defensive so far this season as well. And Botheim is in much better form than Berisha, although I think Berisha still is playing quite good, but he is not creating or scoring enough as he has
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
only had like 2 shots in the last 3 games, which is quite disappointing. So yeah.
It's an interesting one. We also mentioned that Huddersfield ranked first for expected goal conceded with only 2.6. Caveat to that, they have played many less games. So, but they're looking good after 3 games for Huddersfield. So, I'm not quite sure. I will have to keep this thought until the deadline myself to decide whether to ship Berisha out now or later. But I would say both of them get the priority for sure. It's more about look at the other problems in your team. Is Berisha the only problem you have? Then yes, get rid. Otherwise, he can get another game. So yeah, with that, we will conclude this podcast with a question to you, Jakob. Who is your captain for next game week? Is it still Dunham?
It is on Dunham at the moment, yes. As I said, there are quite many good options next on Sunday, but with him scoring against Molde at the end and at home to Sandefjord, although Sandefjord has been decent, Dunham has to be my captain.
Okay, which transfers are you planning or have you made already?
I'm not done any yet, but I have some big question marks in my team. I have Friday, who was subbed at halftime for tactical reasons. I have Lauritsen, who is not looking great and is playing Bodø/Glimt, and I also have Ødegaard in Sarpsborg, who was subbed before 60 minutes last game. So,
oh wow,
2 out of those is a doubt for playing, and Lauritsen maybe will play, but maybe won't score. So I could get in from my bench Hopmark or Diop, or I could take out one of them. But we will have to see. I've not got any good candidates yet.
Yeah. Last question from me as well, just for the benefit of the listeners. Can you go through your team, who's in goal, defense, midfield, and forwards?
For the team I have set up now, I have Karlström in goal. I have Bjørkan, Ødegaard, Dahl Reitan, and Borchgrevink in defense. Dunham captain, Zachariasen vice captain, and Kittola on top with Diop and Hopmark and Haugen from Viking on the bench.
Okay, that's very nice. From my team, I have one free transfer and I have used it actually just after the full time of last game week matches. So in goal, I have Karlström, I have Bjorkan, Bjornbach, and Borsch. That's Progrevink, but I'll just call him Borsch. Orsnes, who came in for Cabran, I did not want to wait. He's gone. Tyler, who missed the penalty, I will have to monitor his situation because he's joining Finland for the Euros. Whether he plays game week 6 and then goes, or he leaves before that, that's something we have to watch out for. Dunham captain as it stands. Borsch is a vice captain as it stands as well. Sorley, Bell, he's still there. Botheim and Berisha. I might take a hit for Berisha to Uhi or Tyler to somebody else if I figure out that he's leaving before game week 6 matches. So that's the plan. The bench is not something to mention. None of them is playing, so did wood picks. Yeah, that's about that. So That's the first episode of the 2021 season. Jakob, thanks very much for taking part. So glad to be back to record and chat Elite Senior Fantasy. Thanks again, and good luck for the next game week. And we speak to each other next time.
We will do. Goodbye.
Bye.